40% annualized ROI on this deal. Is that clickbait? Well, you can decide. Let me know if you think it is. What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch, making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an update. I've mentioned a lot of different times that on Lofty, I think that the real money to be made is buying discounted tokens, basically flipping tokens or, a couple of different strategies. Um, I want to just give you a little bit of an update on where, what I've had going on with that recently, starting with, what you saw in the thumbnail, right, where I've got a 40% return. What am I talking about here, right? Click into this property, it shows zero yield, projected yield 15%. This is a really small deal. The numbers that I'm going to tell you are like very underwhelming as far as a dollar perspective. You've seen a lot of these from me where I'm buying, 9 or 10 tokens. It's only a couple $100. A month or two later, I sell them, but at a decent return. So that's one of the things I have going on here. I actually bought 10 tokens in this one, and I'm going to explain in a minute why. My numbers say 9. But so I'm just going to look at the purchase and sale of 9 of these at the moment. So I bought 9 with fees and everything. Cost me $183.84. I actually bought that in two separate amounts of 5 tokens, so very small investments at a time. Partially this is me still just trying to experiment with this platform, but it also is a function of if you buy too much at a time, you can actually move the price quite a bit by doing that. And so you have to be a little bit careful about how much you buy each time. But, I definitely had the opportunity to buy more of this uh, and didn't just because I am very much still in experimentation mode here. I don't know. I always wait till way too late in the night to do these and get a little tongue tied. Sorry about that. But so anyway, I sold these 9 tokens net of fees. I just made $18 profit. So like really not a lot of money to talk about. You have to be doing a whole bunch of these for this to work, or just doing a lot more tokens. But like I said, I mean, it's an experiment. I'm just seeing, is my directionally, am I right? And percentage wise, am I getting a decent return? And so it took me actually less than 3 months on average. Some of them I bought exactly 3 months ago. Some of them I bought like 2 months ago. Um, but in any case, that's a 10% return, a little bit more than 10% when you think of 1847 over 183. I think if you just look at that, that's pretty obvious. That's 10%. But if you annualize that, and I just multiplied by 4, you get 40% annualized ROI. And at first, when I was doing these, I'm like, it's kind of stupid to annualize it. But I've already reinvested the money that I pulled out of here today. I bought some tokens in a couple other properties. And so I think that it's pretty reasonable, whatever returns that I can, reliably replicate on here. I think that I will be able to continually turn it over, especially as the platform grows and there's more opportunities. So, yeah, I mean, that's a, a doable return, maybe not on a really large scale basis. Because you start to affect the prices more, you push the price up more when you buy a lot, you push the price down more when you sell a lot. I think the way to make this work with more and more capital, one, I think you will end up muting your returns a little. I think they'll be a little bit lower, but let's say, if I'm getting 20 or 25% annualized returns, I'm still going to be pretty excited about that, right? If I'm putting a lot more capital to work. So, as far as why it's 9 tokens, I staked these right away, and I made an extra 35 cents because I staked them. I think for any of them I'm planning to hold short term, I'm no longer going to stake because it is. Well, I'll show you why. Because this one, it shows that I have 0 I can withdraw, but if you hover over here, I actually have 0.9999997 9999997 of a token, right? So almost a whole token that got stuck in there. Someday I'll be able to take that out, but it's unflippable if you have one stuck in there. Now, one thing to keep in mind if I am doing larger amounts, it's still going to just be one token that gets stuck in there. I might end up having a smaller fraction of a token, but it's such a tiny amount. It's not like I'd have to be doing thousands of tokens for it to be two tokens even that get stuck, right? So that's not such a big deal. But when I'm only doing a few at a time, which is what a lot of my experiments have been, I've been buying 10, 12, whatever, whatever is really cheap at the moment. Um, but at least when you're doing that, these really high annualized returns are possible, and I think repeatable, right? Like even though this was only 10%, let me go to another one. I know I talked about this duplex quite a bit in Chicago. This is one that I've put a little bit more capital to work in. Let's see, what do I have right now? I have 70 tokens. I've had up to, I think, 130 or 140 tokens in there, which represented like close to $4,000, maybe a little bit more than 4,000 at the peak. But you can see, I was buying it. I had an average basis of somewhere around $22. When it got up into the 30s, I sold, just about half my stake. I know I did a quick video on that when it happened. That was in a really short period of time, right? It was less than 90 days between my purchase and sale of those. I did get very decent returns. And again, if you had annualized those, I mean, the returns on that would just be absurd. But I also still have 70 tokens that I haven't sold out of there. If I had sold, I definitely could have sold more. I would have gotten a lower percentage return. And so part of me realizes now that I was definitely getting a little bit too greedy. I know I've talked about that in with respect to this Peoria property. I definitely should have sold out some of these at $29. Again, my average basis is around $22 and change on this. It did get up to 29. I think it was very predictable because it started, giving off yield, and then the yield stopped because of a change of manager. When Y Home takes over, they basically shut the yield off at first and then turn it way down. And then, if it's an operating property that was paying out, right? And so I mentioned this the other night. I should have just known this was coming. I did, but I really was hoping I had some limit orders out at $31, and I thought somebody might buy some. I should have just shut that off. I mean, it was a mistake for sure. Could have at least sold some of the tokens, and then, but when it dipped, I've bought more since it got down to 22 again, right? Because um, that's one of the things that I really like about this strategy. I think that yes, I can get very high returns in the short run, but if I get stuck holding any of these, I think that the relative price of these tokens compared to what it's worth in the real world is low, and so then sometime in the future, we'll be able to sell out. But so, I have one other one that I've put a significant amount of capital in. This is my biggest purchase on this site, which is still, it's not a ton of money. I've got like right around $10,000 into this property. 260 tokens. My average basis is higher than this. Uh, it's super interesting to see. Oh, let's see, where is it? It's down here. Yeah, I mean, it's average market price. Well, this is actually not updated to what we just saw. I think I moved it like $1 because I just bought some. But that's one of the things to keep in mind when you are doing this strategy is your purchases and sales move the marketplace. Like it's that thin of a market. Yeah, see 27.58. So yeah, my average cost basis is a little bit higher than that still. Um, I'm really confident in the value of this property being significantly more than than this market price implies. And so yeah, I'm just going to keep buying. Whenever the market price is lower, if it usually I want it to be a decent amount lower than my cost basis, especially on one like this where I've started to put a larger amount of capital relative to the amount. I've only got $40,000 on this account. Until I'm really confident in understanding how this works well, I'm not going to be making very large investments in any of these properties. This is the one I feel the best about because it is in a Texas market. It's a place where I've got a good idea. We've had 3 real estate agents tell us what they think it should sell for. Even if the lowest priced one is the one that's right, it'd still make a good premium over the current market price. And we are moving in the direction of selling this. And so This is one, I think it's one of the first properties that I bought a piece of, and I just continue to buy. And so this is one that if we hopefully do eventually sell this year, my annualized returns won't be so great because it took longer. One of the things I'm starting to figure out the things that move token prices more, and so um, my main strategy, I still believe, is going to be buying these tokens and then pushing for a real life sale. And I think that's where I'm going to be able to put more capital to work. Like I did this with Keeler. I did it with one that's already gone. It's like 175th Street or something. I've got a little bit more money in Keeler. I've got 56. This is set to close in a couple weeks. We're just waiting for some repairs to be complete. My average basis on this one is 23.93, and we're going to get like $37 a token with the way the deal is right now. And so that's going to be a really nice return. Uh, 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months total. And so again, like, yeah, you don't even have to annualize it for me to be happy with the return on this one, but you still can because I'm going to put that money back to work. Dresden, this is one. It says I own 10. I think I have. Do I have 10 staked, or do I really only own 10? Yeah, I've got 10 staked, and I have 10 not staked. So this is one I was a little late to the party on. Um, it is, it was actually already for sale, and I think it might have already been under contract when I bought my tokens. But again, it's my average basis is what 25.53. Oh, maybe I should buy some more of this today. 25.80. Is that really right? Um, yeah. So, and one of the things I gotta always remember, just because I'm buying these doesn't mean that you should, right? You want to do your own due diligence. Um, I do have, please like and subscribe. I have a link in the description to this video to the Discord channel, not the Lofty Discord, but to the one that I set up for some of us to just talk on our own about any of these deals or any of the other fractional real estate investing platforms as well. And then I do have links in the description to any of the sites that I'm currently invested on for fractional real estate. But yeah, so I didn't realize this price had gotten so low again. I think probably after this video, I'll pick up a couple more tokens of this because the way we have it, unless did we get an update? Find inspection photo. Yeah, we're just waiting on a document to close on this. I don't know why this is so cheap right now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and well, I'm going to read and make sure that I'm not missing something. But this is one that I think that we're going to net somewhere in the $30 per token, mid 30s. Maybe I have to go back and do some math because I'm really shocked that this is where that price is. But this might be one too. We got to sell. It might be one that we're getting really big movements just from a little bit of selling. So I might only be able to pick up 1 or 2 tokens before it moves a lot. But again, I mean, like it's going to be, less than 3 months that I've held these tokens. It's going to be a real good annualized return. That's the last example, but I just wanted to, think about. So, like I said, it is still very much an experiment in how I'm going about doing this. But there's a couple of reasons that there's a couple of things that I've thought about. One, I think, like I mentioned, you definitely shouldn't be staking tokens if you're doing this kind of strategy. Some of them that I've staked, like I got like 30 or $40 for the Peoria ones that I staked and the Sangamon. Um, and that worked out well, but if you're doing ones that you just have a small number of tokens, there's a good chance that some of those tokens will be trapped. When you are doing the larger ones, I think the more capital that you're putting into it, you either want to make sure that you're close to a sale somehow. I think Odom, I think I was a little bit too ambitious because there had been a discussion of selling it already when I bought the first tokens, but now it's been probably close to 6 months that they've been talking about that. Right now, most of the tokens that I've bought have been much more recent than that. And we have had a vote to put it up for sale, but that process has just been a little bit uglier. And so I think that I'm going to avoid If I'm counting on the real world sale to be where the profit comes from, I'm going to be paying a lot more attention to how realistic is it to get the other owners on board with the real world sale. One of the issues with this one is it's just it's a whole lot of tokens, right? And so outstanding. And so to own a reasonable piece of this, I mean, I think I've told you I put almost $10,000 or a little over 10,000 into this one, and I don't even own 3% of it. Contrast that to one like, let's see, Raymond, where I have over 5%. I've only put little, like around $2,000. Like, um, and obviously, even if I can buy the full 15% that I'm allowed, I don't have control. But if I can do that, and then two or three other people that I communicate with are doing that, then we have a much better chance of convincing all of our co-owners that we should sell it. So that's one of the things is, really looking for some like-minded people to connect with. That's why I always invite you guys to be in the Discord. Um, but so, the other thing I wanted to mention, to make this strategy really work with a lot more capital, um, I'm just going to have to pick up more and more properties. And, there are a whole bunch that Lofty's only got, well, I think they have, you see 154 or something on here. If you include all the ones that they've delisted but are still tradable because they're for sale or something, um, I think you get up to like 167. I've probably analyzed, I don't know, probably less than half already. So there's, I have more work to do there, and so there'll be others that I think I'll be doing that with. But the other thing is too is, I'm going to start looking for not just those, not just ones that I'm really confident we're going to sell soon, but ones too like Sangamon, which, I got to sell a bunch of those because it went from zero yield to having a yield. And, just that higher yield popped the price up enough to sell a bunch. It's lower again this month, which is why, there's probably going to be buying opportunities. And so looking for ones that have this operating reserve rule where, they cut the yield in half if it's not full and until they fill it. And any of the ones that have that operating reserve rule tend to have really big swings whenever the changes happen. And so, we can really pay attention to what's going on with that operating reserve and pretty reliably be able to see some of this stuff. I mean, the same thing happened with Peoria. The difference in this one is the switch in management. And I think I'm going to be stuck having to buy these for the next 3 months until, because the way Y Home works, I don't think there'll be any real yields out of this property for at least 90 days. It may be longer, but I don't think there's any chance of, I think they'll turn on like, 1 or 2% yield, even though it's fully occupied and collecting rent and has an operating reserve. They'll still just drip a little bit of return out first, just because that's the way that they run things. Um, but knowing that this was going to happen, because I've experienced it with other properties have taken over, I definitely should have sold out more here and then bought some the next day, when it dropped precipitously, right? And so that's why there's more and more of these little triggers that I can realize, like, okay, uh, these are opportunities, and it's because these token prices are so controlled by the rental yield from last month, right? And so, you know, my main strategy is buying at a discount to the real world price. I think that's the way we make sure that we don't get hurt. Like, that's my goal, is never lose capital, right? And then if I can create a situation where I'm getting really great short-term returns. And so, and yeah, I showed you on that one, okay, that 40% annualized ROI. Well, if I end up getting some lazy capital stuck in here, right? Like maybe Peoria, um, maybe it doesn't get up to $30 until, much later in the year. Okay, well then I sell out and I make 10 or 15 or 20%, or 10 or 15% probably if I sell in the low 30s, after fees and everything. I mean, by anybody's standard, that's really not a bad return. Even if I end up selling at a 7% return, but it took 6 months and I can double it, right? Like, if I'm getting into double digits, I can't complain about it, but I am spending a decent amount of time on this. So I'll have to be able to do that with a lot more capital to be happy about, the return on time. But it is, I think when I blend across the whole portfolio, it will be a very strong return. Um, as long as I start doing one, putting more into these smaller, quicker ones, and then two, the other thing that like I said, I really messed up. I should have just taken some profit, taken some off the table on these ones because I mean I did have a decent gain, and it's still, and I think I talk a lot about, my goal is to never have to be right about some specific prediction, and by trying to wait for $30 specifically, um, I just thought I was right, right? I was just thinking, oh, it's just going to get to 30. It was so close. It got to 29.40 something, 29.45. I did have, this was me. There was one sale at $30.99, but it was just one token. Um, but instead, if I had just looked at like, hey, at 29 bucks, I'm still making a pretty good return. Let me just sell 20, 30, 40 tokens out, at a solid profit. And like if I had looked at, how long I really held them, I think it would have actually been a great annualized ROI. Instead, there's a little bit of hubris happened, right? Like I was like, oh no, I just know what's going on. And so that's one of the things, um, I really like to have strategies where I don't have to be right. And so uh, one of the things that I do a lot is take profits. This is not really related to real estate in real life because you don't get to do this that often. But in other, I don't ever talk about it, but I used to do a lot of, not a lot, but some options trading and stuff like that a long, long time ago, before I had the capital to get into real estate in real life. And even when a little bit in tandem, but I really don't talk about that. I think, and certainly not an expert in it at all. But one of the things that, has always worked well for me is taking profits when profits are available, right? Like if I buy something and it goes up to a point where it's a reasonable profit, I'm always selling at least some of it. And so it's kind of like hedging my bet, right? Okay, if it keeps going up, well, I didn't make quite as much, but I'm still happy I made a profit. But if it goes down, then I get to buy more. Um, that's one of the things where we have these like really wildly fluctuating prices. Uh, I'll just keep doing it. And then at the end of the day, if the token prices never go up, we're either going to sell this at some point and then we get a big pop in value there, or it just starts to perform, a little bit more reliably, right? Like, I mean, it has tenants in it. It's collecting rent. This yield is just artificially low just because of the new manager. So, that's really all I wanted to say about this chart. I just want to give you an update on all the different ones that I've got going on, why I still think that's the real strategy on here. I mean, I do, I have, in addition to that, and I know I've talked about it, I still have a few that I'm accumulating more for just as a long-term investment. Garden Gate, I think, is the best example of that. Um, I bought a little bit more of this, DK Ranch as well today. Ones that I believe a lot in the price. I think that we're getting a discount relative to the real world price, and they have an, okay yield. I mean, this isn't an amazing yield, although this was an STR, so it's kind of all over the place. Um, Garden Gate is just a long-term rental, so when I'm happy with the yield and I think I'm getting a discount. Um, but as I've mentioned a lot of times, I think more of my long-term just set it and forget it dollars are going to go into Mogul from this point forward. And I think that the strategy that I'll primarily use on Lofty is just going to be, buying discounted tokens to flip, whether that's selling those trading those tokens as with the while the price fluctuates wildly, or whether that's, buying the tokens and trying to sell the property in real life. I think both of those strategies I'm going to continue to pursue. And then every once in a while I think I'll get lucky and have one that just, I bought it real cheap, and then it just starts to perform, and then just keep it in and let that happen. One of the things I wanted to mention though too is if thank you if you're still listening to my rambling this far along. I wanted to ask if you're somebody who hates Lofty or Landa or Arrived and wants to share your experience on any of these platforms and wants to talk to me, we'll record it and put it online on this channel. I know that you know, I think I've had a really good experience on Lofty. I think there's a lot to complain about. Like they have no idea what my returns really are. Uh, I don't know what, none of their math ever seems to work right. They think I made 2.5%, but then also think that I made a $5,000 gain on just 38,000. And, most of this money has been on here less than 3 months. So I know a lot of their math is broken. I complain about this whenever I'm looking at the properties and looking at their, looking at these yields. I think none of these ever make sense. I think it's a platform, obviously that you have to really have real estate knowledge and dig into the properties and understand what that property's worth. And if you can do that and understand, figure out the timing of when it's going to start paying and different things like that, I think there's the opportunity to make a ton of money. But I know a lot of you have talked to me about losing money on lots of these platforms, having a lot of frustration with it. And so, yeah, I'd like to sort of share that perspective on here. I know that not everybody likes it as much as I do. Part of it is I just really enjoy. Like, I mean, I know it's stupid, right? I really only made 18 bucks on this trade, but I get excited about the percent, right? Because it's a good indicator that over the long run I'll be able to actually make a decent amount more money. And it's not like, the other thing too is there's the opportunity to jump back into this and do it over and over again, right? So we do the due diligence on the properties each one time. And you can see that with Sangamon, right? Like I'm already have picked up some again, even though I sold out a whole bunch of tokens at the top last month. Um, I've already picked up some on the dips and I'll probably have some opportunities to sell, like that's, um, I think I'm just mentioning that to make it clear that, it's not as it might seem like it's going to be a terrible return on time to do it, but I think that most of the work is done on a lot of these properties. Just have to read any recent updates, look for, new documents. A lot of that has gotten pretty easy using the Lofty Assist tool I showed you about the other day. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, you can see it in the tools section of our Discord. Um, but you can go in there and see all the just all the updates for just your properties if you mark the ones that you own. And so I don't know, I think that's at this point I think there's no question in my mind that you can make a good return on an investment, maybe a relatively small investment. And so my next thing that I'm really trying to figure out is can I get a good return on my time? And that's why I'm talking about like, you only have to do that due diligence once and then we can keep trading it. Um, I think that's, I'm going to have to start putting more and more capital on here and see if I can make bigger trades that are just as profitable. If Keeler and Dresden both sell that, both close this month like they're supposed to, that'll give me a little bit more confidence in that real world sales strategy. Depending on what happens to Odom, this will be, it'll have a big impact on the returns for me this year, just based off of the money I have on there so far. Um, but I will just start putting, more and more into some of these deals. I am, I feel pretty good about the platform now. I think that I'm past the point where I'm worried, is this a scam, right? Now I'm to the point where I think I understand how most of the stuff works. And I think I've dialed in like what my strategy is going to be. And it's not like I don't think that this is a great long term, buy and hold platform for the most part. I think and, I've talked about why quite a bit, but uh one just being that anything that's any good that's in a good market and I think will perform well. They're just asking for too large of a premium most of the time. Um, but the other is the way the debt works, it works kind of against you from an appreciation perspective, and so I think that that's not super helpful. That's why again, I think if that were for the money that I'm going to devote to that strategy, I think it's going to be mogul for a little while. Obviously I'm still experimenting over there too, but I think they're doing, their strategy is much more straightforward. Their math seems to be much more, it's much more in line with what I expect for real estate math. So, that's what I'm doing there. But but there's no fun to be had over there, right? They give you a property every once in a while. I can look at it, analyze it, and then decide, okay, I'm going to put some money into it or not. There's none of these like, ooh, I got an alert. I picked up some of these for close to free. I mean, I bought some tokens. Some of these, there were single digit, there were some trades that were like $6 and $9 um, tokens, which is just absurd. I mean, it's for any of them that if the price of the asset is where I think it is, it's um, those are just huge discounts. And I want to go back to that because I do talk about, I don't want to have to be right about something. Most of the time when I'm talking about that, I don't want to have to be right about a prediction about the future. But I feel very confident in when I'm looking at the real world value of assets. I might not be perfectly exact on it, but I don't think that I'm going to be 40% off, which is where sometimes, tokens are discounted that far. And so it's part of the reason where I'm not trying to make a lot of very thin trades, because then you do just have to be really precise about like what the value, like, I mean, if you're trading anything that's right around that $50 in their initial trade, you have to really know, like, is this, are they right on with that money, especially because there's, a lot of them are putting a little premium on there. Um, so I don't know that, I think the bigger the discount is, the more sure that you can be that you're actually getting a discount, right? Like, so some of these guys are selling out tokens, on new properties, and they're like, oh, it's $3 off. You're getting a real discount there. That looks like a 6% discount, but it might be 6% from a 5% inflated price that was also, not the best appraisal, right? And so then what looks like a discount might not be. But if I'm getting a 20 or 40% discount, which is, 40% discount is a $30 token. If $50 is what you really think the asset's worth, well, then I could be way off and still be in the money. And so that's what I mean. A lot of times when I'm talking about, I don't want to be right. I don't want to have to be, I don't want to have to be predicting the future correctly, is what I mean. Then I kind of say that as shorthand for it. I know, when I talk to my team about it, they get it. And so sometimes I think, I might assume you guys are hearing something where I'm only saying like half the thing, right? So I don't want to have to be right about a prediction I'm making about the future, um, and I don't want to have to be precisely right about values today. I want there to be so much margin that there's just no chance that I'm wrong, right? Like I want there to be, there'd have to be some huge hidden problem for me to be wrong, when the purchase of some of these tokens. So let me just do the math and I'll just show you. And then that's the last thing, right? Let's just do this. So let's see. There's 11,877 tokens outstanding. 2758 times 1.085, that's just to account for the fees, times 11,877. It's as if we're paying 355,000 for this property, right? Including fees. The lowest estimate that somebody was like, if you want to sell it right away, let me do that again. Sorry. 270, 2758. I think I said that wrong anyway. 1.085, that accounts for the fees. Times 11,877. Okay, 355,000. Uh, and then so they said 425,000 would be like fire sale price. And so, okay, times 0.9 to account for all of your closing costs. And now we're going to subtract the 355. And so even fire sale price at the very lowest one with a high, and I'm really adding a lot of closing costs in there, still there's a profit to be made, right? And you can see, House Canary thinks it's way over the 425. The median of the agents' predictions was like 500,000. I think probably 450 or 500 is probably a more accurate number. But take this profit, divided by your 11,877, and you're making a couple bucks per token on a 20 something dollar. You're not even making 10% on that, but that's like I took a worst case scenario and I layered on higher expenses. um and I'm working on, I think that by the time we get this sold, if I keep it up, I'll end up having an average basis that's even lower. Because every time it dips down now, we've got some decent dips. I mean, there was an absurdly cheap sale, but like, I've gotten some decent ones, and I think that I'll get more. Um, so I think the downside is, you can see a lot would have to go wrong for me to still make some money there, right? And then okay, we can get even further wrong before I start to lose money. And that's always what I'm most concerned about, right? If I'm not losing money and I can have a decent chance to make money, and then across a whole bunch of these, average a high return, because I have some that are making little and some that are making quite a bit more, then, I'm perfectly happy with that. Anyways, now I've rambled for way too long. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.